You know, I've never talked really about this, but a few years ago, I think it's been about 2 or 3 years ago, my uncle passed away. My uncle had a lot of money, but he didn't get himself squared away with all of his assets and things like this. And so at the last minute, he was, you know, paper napkins and such, you know, I'm going to give this to this. And so now it's all tied up in court. And there's a lot of issues around it. There's a lot of creditors that are coming in and making demands and saying, you know, well, he owed me this and he owed me that. And so that's been, it's going to be 3 years.
Wow.
Or is it maybe 3.5? Mom will give me a call. Maybe that'll be a good message for me to get. Mom will give me a call and let me know. So Mike Bjorkman is here from Home Smart Real Estate. And when you sent this email to us yesterday and said, let's talk about probate, I thought this is a really good idea because I know from personal experience, obviously, that this is something that gets really tied up. It's frustrating for the family, and we're going, why is it that his assets can't be distributed to those he wanted them to be distributed to? Right. And it's all tied up right now. Right. So what is probate, first of all? Talk about what probate would be.
Well, probate's not the most complicated thing in the world, but as an agent that specializes in probate, and always have, it's not a big deal to me, but so many people, and I'll throw out some statistics today, 95% of all assets are going to go through probate. Baby boomers over 55 are in control of 75% of America's wealth. They are the most asset-rich but cash-poor generation, and us Gen X is the poorest generation. So how that comes out and about is over the next, till 2017, we have $17 trillion that are going to be going through probate. All the assets are either in a living trust or not. The executors of the estates, or the administrators, if you will, are cash poor, our generation, and they have to sell off all these assets to be able to pay the probate taxes and stuff like that. So there's a couple common problems with probate. And I guess, first of all, let's go back to your question. Probate is when you have an estate, someone passes away, if you're not in a living trust, the court has to approve where everything goes. You can't just willy-nilly, just as a son or daughter or niece or nephew come in and just say, that's mine, that's mine. It has to be, the court has to administer this. And since back into the late 1700s,
the paper napkin won't work. Like they've
correct. Yeah. People just say, oh, I wrote it down, who gets what? And the courts say, no, that's not how it works. It's very lucrative for the government to have probate because the probate gets a lot of taxes from it, up to 55%, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
So it's really important to avoid probate with a living trust. But the problem is so many of us don't properly either fund our living trust or record our living trust. And of course, I care because the biggest reason is real estate. The most common problem right now is in the last few years, people have done a lot of loan modifications, refinances, and the loan banks have been very funny about, I want the husband on title, not the wife, and I want them to hold title in a certain way. And the problem is, once you've refied your property, you need to remember to put it back in your living trust. Most people don't, and I even made that mistake. So your estate ends up in probate, and the judge needs to say, was there intent to put it back in? And there's just a bunch of problems that go with it. And
let me ask you a quick question, because you're talking about the living trust, and a lot of people, they go see an attorney or a paralegal and they drop a will. It's not a living trust.
No.
So is a will not going to be accepted, or?
No, the will you want to put inside of your living trust has pretty much your whole estate planning in it. And that's what, 95% of the cases are going to be settled through probate instead of an attorney's office like it should be. Most of us, we run around building wealth all the time, but we forget to put that wealth inside of our living trust. So eventually it has to go into probate. The biggest problem is since we're such a cash poor generation right now, the parents or relatives intend for the children to benefit from the real estate. That they worked long and hard, and they were always taught save and invest and invest. Right. And it goes back to the Great Depression, where it was the biggest bank system failure of all times.
Penny saved is a penny earned.
Yeah. So these people have all this property, but their estates can't properly fund. They don't have enough liquidity in the states to keep the property, so the poor kids have to sell off all the property. Good for me, bad for the future
families.
of Gen X.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just so important to get your attorney involved and keep your estate in probate properly.
Now, what about, and I've had this in my own family where, I've said, do you have your trust going to, oh, no, we don't have it, but we're fine. If I die, it goes to my spouse anyway.
Yeah, community property, you're right. Community property, it'll go to your spouse. However, if you're not holding title properly or if your estate's not properly, the heirs could contest that and slam you into probate. So you got to be careful with that as well. Most people that I talk to, they say, you know what, I'll get around to it. I'm nowhere near the age where I'm going to pass away, or we're not nowhere near the age where we're going to pass away. They kind of think out of sight, out of mind, we'll get to it. So the biggest numbers of people doing living trusts are 30 to 40 and then 60 and above, because at past 60 they go, oh, we better start preparing. But when we're business people in our prime of, we're in the years what we call our collecting years. We're collecting estates and property and things like that. We want to protect it. But people my age, I talk to all the time, they're just not quite, they did their living trust 5-6 years ago and they've accumulated lots of wealth and lots of property, and they haven't properly updated their living trust, and then you're going to end up in probate again.
And I want to point out, and this is for Mike's sake as well as our viewers, that you're not an attorney.
Yeah, no, I was going to get to that.
Yeah, and however,
He was going to cover that.
I knew you were, but obviously, if you need advice, and you can point people in the right direction to be able to get the right help.
For over 20 years, I've been working closely with probate attorneys, and there's a couple things that I specialize in. When somebody passes away, you have to submit to the courts to petition for a probate, and then you want to be the conservator, the executor of that estate, and then you have to wait for the court orders. And what I specialize in is getting the letters of administration, meaning I could sell the inheritance property without the court confirmation. Court confirmation could take another 30 or 40 days, and then somebody could outbid you and raise the prices of whatever's in the estate. So I specialize in avoiding that, which is extremely important. And of course, walking people through the entire process, because it's a pretty scary time. And the biggest problem is people need to keep making payments on this estate. By the time you get through a probate, 90 days or more, these properties are going into foreclosure because nobody can afford to make the payments on this. So I like to rush it through, and that's what I specialize in. So if we do need to sell it, we can do it before a foreclosure sale date.
Think about that. That's a good point.
There's a lot involved.
Yeah.
I guess it is a little more complicated
a lot of
than I
people
said.
thinking right now, and probate taxes, they're high. You hear out there, oh, I don't need to get a living trust. That's just an attorney's way to make money. It's nothing compared to what you're going to lose in probate taxes your family won't get.
Up to 55% if the estate's over $5 million.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
So anyways, yes, I'm not an attorney. Contact your attorney for more information.
If you don't have an attorney, contact Mike Bjorkman at mike@SantaCretaRealEstate.com, and he'll get you some good referrals.
We'll get you all dialed in.
Thanks, Mike.
Home Smart Real Estate, we appreciate it. When we come back, Joe Messina is going to be on the program. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about election. We're also going to talk about some pretty interesting stories around the country that you will not believe. He's already laughing. Mike's already laughing. He knows.
I heard with the stories. I'm not going nowhere.